Hello and welcome back to the Baldman Motors YouTube channel. On this channel we primarily look at German cars and more specifically older AMGs, so in today's video I'm going to put my two E55 AMGs head to head and go over which one you should choose if you're in the market for one. Right now a lower mile W210 E55 costs about the same as a higher mile W211 E55, and I think that over time they will only continue to get closer together price wise until I see the W210 surpassing the W211. As these cars are now quite similar in price, I think it's worthwhile that if you have a budget from $8,000 to $10,000, then which one is the right V8 asphalt destroyer for you? So starting with the drivetrain, they're quite similar, but I believe the overall consensus is that the M113 and the W210 slightly outlast the supercharged M113K and the W211. Of course, there are high mileage examples of both V8s, but from what I've seen, people have had more engine problems than the supercharged W211. Also keep in mind that the newer W211s are usually modded much more, and that may be a contributing factor. Both cars love eating alternators as snacks, so I recommend keeping a few $100s handy for that repair, and try to buy OEM if you can. Many auto parts stores or Amazon alternators just don't seem to last as much long term. These cars also both love tearing apart the motor mounts as well with all that torque. 349 rated brake horsepower for the 99 to 02 E55s and 3,635 pounds of curb weight give this a pound of horsepower rating of 10.41. And the later 2003 to 2006 E55s have a rated 469 brake horsepower and roughly 4,000 pounds of curb weight, giving this sedan a power to weight ratio of 8.52. This makes the earlier E55 have almost the identical power to weight of a 2022 4-cylinder EcoBoost Mustang or a 2004 GTO, and faster than a 301 horsepower 2022 Camry. The W211 meanwhile contains the power of a small planet. I mean, more power to weight than a 392 Challenger Scat Pack, 2015 Mustang 5.0, 2014 Camaro SS, or 2018 Chevy SS sedan. So in the power category, of course, the W211 is the winner. Also keep in mind, nearly all of these cars are multiples in terms of price over these older AMG offerings. Okay, enough about the engine. Moving on to the transmission. The 2001 has a slower reacting 722.65 speed automatic, and the W211 has a little faster 722.6 as well. That's just my experience having driven both cars for several years, and both of them still have the stock TCU tune, so you could certainly improve that, but we're going over these cars as they come stock, so that's what I'll address here. In the transmission category, I'm going to go ahead and just give the AMGs a tie. As these are heavier cars, the front suspension does wear out a bit faster on both cars, and the W210 suspension with conventional shocks make it much more reliable than the aromatic suspension found on the newer E55. So I will say that the aftermarket support has made maintenance much more cost effective on the air suspension, and multiple suspension settings is fun, but it can still be a headache if an air spring blows while driving. So in the suspension category for reliability, the W210 is a clear winner. For brakes, the W211 has much better braking capacity, but I think it has less feel and it feels just a little bit wonky, I guess, if the word I'd use to describe it, because of the SBC electric brake system that Mercedes used in the era. A positive though is the rotors and pads are cheaper on the W211. The W210 has better brake feel, but the front rotors alone cost usually north of $200 a piece, so the brake jobs are an Achilles heel of this car. You can buy a front rotor set and pads for the W211 almost for the price of just one front W210 rotor. So I think considering prices and brake feel, I'm going to put this as a tie as well, with maybe a little bit of an edge just because of brake feel to the W210, but that's really a personal preference. The W211 wins in the rust department. Even though not as many years have passed for it, it has already shown much greater tolerance than the W210 for rust resistance. For tail lights, expect W211 third brake light seal to leak, and for the W210, the trunk lights. So even there, a slight edge for the W210 up front, as the HIDs are a bit simpler than the W211 active quartering lamps, though both cars suffer from absolute garbage wiring in the headlights. The wiring insulation cracks easily and shorts out from all the heat cycles and age. To replace the front plastic lens, the W210 are right around $180, while the W211 is around $70. I would expect these prices to continue to rise, and overall I still give the W210 the win for headlight reliability. Styling wise, this is very subjective. I think the gangster looking W210 with monoblocks will continue to grow as a classic, while the curves and subtle styling of the W211 will also be a timeless design here in a few years. I think this one still needs to grow on people for a bit and mature in its overall appreciation of its style. In my opinion, the W211 has a nicer rear end, a decent side profile, and a fairly nice front end as well. I think the W210 though has a nicer side profile, but the blockier shape of the rear end I don't find as desirable. So I'll give this a tie in the category as well. For the interior, the W211 feels much more modern, and overall the plastic and electronics just seem to hold up quite a bit better. The W210 has a more classic and traditional Mercedes look, so this is quite subjective, though weird electrical issues, brittle plastic speaker covers, sunroof vent grills, and rattles definitely play this model more, so this I'm going to go ahead and put as a win for the W211. As far as space goes in the interior, I think the W211 feels just a bit less open and spacious, but it does have a larger trunk, so I kind of place this as a tie as well, whereas the W210, I feel like I have more room up front, but the trunk is certainly smaller because of the orientation of how they mounted the fuel tank behind the back seat. So the next one might be a little useless for some, but I'm going to go ahead and call it out. For cup holders, the W211 wins only, I think, on the later 2005 and 2006 models, as they have the simple cup holder design like I have here, while the early W211s and the W210s suffer from the early 2000s German over-engineering, and they're quite unreliable and they're expensive to replace, though I definitely think they're neat to look at and operate. Now let's talk value. Bang for buck, the best experience for the money. Going to have to give to the W210 for a few reasons. It is in the appreciating curve, as I think the period of most appreciation happened back in 2018. And that's about when I bought mine for $2,800, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find one for $2,800 nowadays. I think we are still going to see a bit of a price lowering in the W211 E55s, but that's pretty hard to tell with the current inflation and wild market speculation. I've certainly seen a lot more of the higher mileage examples going for quite a bit less, and the low mileage examples definitely seem to be appreciating in value. But the middle of the road, the 140 to 180,000 mile range, I would say, is seeming to be like, I think it's still dropping possibly. It's a hard tell. It just really depends on the market where you're at on that one. Though I definitely think that the W210 is just pretty much going up across the board. And sure, I think there are some sellers who are asking, a bit too much, but you have that in nearly every market. So. But for the next thing, I would say the W210 generally costs less to maintain, and I say that now having owned both cars for a few years. Now, I should caveat that I'm speaking of working on your own vehicle to fix it. I can't really speak to the cost that it would cost if you took it to a mechanic. With the different parts, depending on their supplier and things like that, maybe the W210 is even more expensive. So that's kind of subjective there, but for my experience and the things I've owned, I've put a lot less money. Even with some of the more recent problems I've had, I'd still say the W210 is a winner in the price department of maintenance. I think the W210 gives a better driving experience. It handles a bit better and feels lighter and nimbler. Now granted, I do have a set of the Bilstein B8 shocks, so that definitely helps improve the ride. Whereas the aromatic suspension in the W211 is just a little bit more floaty, and the overall the car just feels so much more heavier. Additionally, I'm going to have to say, just like with my C55, I think that the sound of the naturally aspirated M113 just to me sounds better under full throttle acceleration than the W211, but that's such a minute difference and such a small thing, but that's just kind of my preference there. Now, I say all of this here at the beginning here of 2022, and I think before too long, depending on how the economy goes, which right now is looking a bit rough, I think that the W210 will appreciate in value beyond reach here pretty soon. That it's going to, for just a good daily driver or something that someone, just wants to appreciate, I think it's going to get out of reach for a lot of people, unfortunately, just because of the appreciation it's already had, and it's already kind of went through its lowest appreciation. And there's just a lot more, I would say, hype around this car. Even my videos that I do on this car usually do much better than my W211s. So for this E55 head-to-head, the W211 accumulated 7 points, and the W210 received 9. So the winner for me is the W210. Let me know down below what you guys think. I don't mean this to be a divisive video, of course, but this is just my opinion, and I thought I'd share it. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy your rides as much as I do mine. And let me know what you think I got wrong or right. And until next time, bye for now.